All right, here we go. Welcome to the 2025 Trial by Combat Championship Trial. We're really excited for this trial. Before we get to the round itself, I want to introduce our scoring panel. Before I introduce them, I want to just give you a sense of the theme of this panel. Every year we try to do have a theme of our final round panel, and this year's theme is former competitors who have gone through exactly what these two competitors have gone through, and specifically, these are Drexel-Klein current students or alum who've either competed at Trial by Combat before or at Top Gun, which is the law school tournament that inspired this competition. So I'm going to start with Clark Doig. Clark is a 2024 graduate of the Klein School of Law. Clark competed in the final round of Top Gun in 2023, and he also competed the next year, so he was at Top Gun twice. Clark is a courtroom scholar. He attended Drexel-Klein on that scholarship, which is our scholarship for AMTA competitors. Before he got to Drexel-Klein, he was an award-winning AMTA competitor from Wheaton. Clark competed in 5 championship trials over the course of his 2 years at Drexel-Klein, which is a Drexel-Klein record. Now, Clark works at a big law firm called Reed Smith, and he is a coach of one of our trial teams. Grace Grimes is a 2022 graduate of Drexel-Klein. Grace competed at Top Gun in 2022. When Grace was a student at Drexel-Klein, she had no AMTA experience, but she won the regional championship both years as a competitor at Drexel-Klein, which again is a Drexel-Klein record. And now Grace works at Klein Inspector, which is one of the handful of top plaintiffs law firms in the country, where Grace, in just a short period of time, has tried a bunch of cases. And as of a few days ago, Grace had the office next to mine. Dennis Tincelli, some of you probably know Dennis from the videos of the final rounds from AMTA National Championships. Dennis is a 2024 graduate of the Drexel-Klein School of Law. Dennis competed at the very first Trial by Combat in 2018 that was hosted in this building. Dennis has multiple All-Americans as an AMTA alum from UVA and is a national champion as a college competitor. Dennis also attended Drexel-Klein on a courtroom scholarship where he won multiple awards and was the national champion of UCLA Law's verdict competition in 2023. Brian Walker is a rising 2L at the Drexel-Klein School of Law, where he's attending the law school on a courtroom scholarship as well. Brian is an All-American AMTA alum from Georgia. Brian competed at Trial by Combat twice, one of the select few competitors who's done that. Brian was 6th at Trial by Combat in 2023. Murray Edwards is also a rising 2L and also attending Drexel-Klein on a courtroom scholarship. Before that, she was an All-American competitor from Furman. She also competed at Trial by Combat twice, that same select few people who've done that. And she finished 3rd at Trial by Combat in 2022. And last but certainly not least, William Booth was my first student as a coach at Drexel-Klein. Will is an AMTA alum from Wake Forest. He was Drexel's representative at Top Gun 2020. He was the regional champion as a law school competitor in 2020. And now he works at a plaintiff's firm in Pennsylvania doing toxic tort litigation. And he's also a coach on our trial team. And with that, we're going to get started. Just give me a second to get up on the bench. All right, are both parties present and ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, let's have you put your appearances on the record.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon. My name is Patrick McDonald. I'm joined at counsel table today by Ms. Abigail Davis.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Good afternoon.
Together, we're here on behalf of the estate of Sam Farnsworth, the plaintiff in this case.
All right, let's have the defense make their appearances.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Rory Banfalvi, and today I'm joined at counsel table by Jacob Kramer.
Good afternoon.
And together, we represent the defendant in today's case, the city of Philadelphia.
All right, is there anything that we need to do before we proceed to opening statements?
Nothing from us, Your Honor.
All right,
Nothing from us, Your Honor.
easy enough. All right, plaintiff, you can make your opening statement when you're ready.
Yes, Your Honor. May it please the court, counsel, members of the jury. The city chose to save money instead of a man's life. Today you'll hear about a young 23-year-old man named Sam Farnsworth, who died earlier this year at Philadelphia's Super Bowl after party from a risk that city officials knew about. That whenever a Philadelphia team wins big, fans climb the light posts and fans can fall down. As you listen to the evidence today, I want you to pay attention to three risks that the city created that caused Sam's death: the light posts, the ladders, and the landing zones. It's February 9th, 2025. Right outside the doors of this building in Center City, Philadelphia. The Eagles have just won the Super Bowl, and the atmosphere is electric. Crowds are pouring through the streets, music is blasting, fireworks are heard overhead. And right in the middle of it is a young Eagles fan named Sam Farnsworth. He's excited. He's celebrating the moment his team has just won. Then Sam and his friend Lanny Davidson see one of those light posts that Eagles fans always climb. So they go to check it out. Sam says, "Hey, doesn't the city normally put grease on these light posts?" Lanny says, "Yeah, I don't see any grease there at all. Maybe it's okay to climb." So they look for a way up. And they see a metal fence right at the base of the light post. Lanny climbs on top of it. It acts as a ladder that the city put there. And Lanny uses it to go up. Sam waits at the base. You'll hear that just half a block away, a city police officer is watching the whole scene. The officer sees Sam at the base, sees Lanny climb up, and sees the metal fence there at the bottom. And you'll hear that the officer makes a decision not to clear the landing zone. The officer doesn't go over and move the metal fence. The officer doesn't go over and tell Sam to move. The officer doesn't yell up at Lanny to stay put because there's someone at the bottom. Instead, you'll hear the officer panics. He rushes to the scene, looks up, and yells. And you'll hear that decision turned a dangerous situation into a catastrophe. Because when the officer yells up, Lanny slips and falls on top of Sam and the metal fence that are still there. Sam crumples to the ground, hits his head on the metal pole, and bleeds out. Members of the jury, today you'll hear that the reason the city chose not to grease the poles, the reason the city put metal fences that acted as ladders at the base, the reason the city didn't hire enough police officers to clear the landing zones at the bottom was because of the cost. You'll hear that the city chose to save money instead of a man's life. And that's why you're here. Because Sam's parents have brought a suit of negligence against the city. To prove our case, we have to prove three elements by a preponderance of the evidence, which means more likely true than not. First, that the city acted unreasonably. Second, that Sam suffered harm. And third, that the city's unreasonable actions caused the harm that Sam suffered. We'll prove those elements to you by showing you the three risks the city created that caused Sam's death: the light posts, the ladders, and the landing zones. First, Sam's friend, Miss Lanny Davidson, will testify that the city didn't take the normal precautions they usually do, that they didn't grease the poles on Super Bowl Sunday, and therefore that it was easy to climb up. Instead, she'll tell you that they put metal fences at the base of the poles, which made it even easier to climb, because she could use the fence as a ladder. Finally, the city's director of public safety, Walker Edwards, will be forced to admit that those metal fences the city put there were what caused Sam to die, because he hit his head against the metal pole and bled out. The city's police officer himself, Mr. Jones, will tell you that he didn't clear the landing zone before Lanny fell. Members of the jury, after we've examined these risks the city knew about but chose not to solve, you'll see that they chose to save money instead of a man's life. And that's why we'll ask you to hold the city responsible. Find them liable. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, counsel. Ms. Banfalvi, when you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court. This case isn't about danger. It's about defiance. It's game day here in Philly. And not just any game, it's the Super Bowl. And when that clock hits 0 and the Eagles send the Chiefs packing, our city erupts. Everyone rushes out onto the street. There's a sea of green jerseys as far as you can see. People are laughing, they're drinking, they're dancing. It's joy, chaos, and history all rolled into one. 100,000 people took to the streets that night. And because the city did their job, 99,999 of them make it home safe that night. Tragically, you'll learn that one man, Sam Farnsworth, he didn't. But today, you're also going to learn what made Mr. Farnsworth different than those other 99,999 fans. It comes down to two numbers, 26 and 0.1. 26 nanograms per milliliter of marijuana in his system and a blood alcohol content of 0.1. Both indicate impairment and both explain the choices that he makes next. He sees a lamppost. He walks up to it. He climbs over that fence that the city's put there to keep him safe. He enters a restricted zone, and so does his friend. And he waits at the bottom of that pole as his friend starts to climb 18 feet in the air, and he's egging her on the whole time. One dangerous and deliberate decision after another. So when she falls, it ends in tragedy. But this case, it's not about a city that didn't care about its citizens. It's not about a system that failed Mr. Farnsworth. No, it's about a young man who stepped outside of boundaries both literal and legal. It's not about danger. It was about his defiance. Now, today, the plaintiff, they brought a negligence suit against the city of Philadelphia for that same young man's death. But what that means is that they carry the first burden today to prove their case by a preponderance of the evidence. That means that they have to show you it was more likely than not that, one, the city owed Mr. Farnsworth a duty of care. They had a responsibility to protect him. Two, they breached that duty to Mr. Farnsworth. They failed to protect him. And three, that the city's failure, that was a substantial factor in Mr. Farnsworth's death. Now, where the plaintiff's going to run into problems today meeting their burden is with those last two elements, breach and causation. Because we're going to show you two simple facts: how the city acted and how people like Sam Farnsworth responded. Now, I want to take each of those in turn, starting with how the city acted. Because today you're going to hear from a defense witness, an expert in public safety, Walker Edwards. And she's going to tell you about the three-pronged safety plan she had in effect to keep people safe in those Super Bowl celebrations. A public awareness campaign with a simple message: don't climb the poles. A fence surrounding every single light post in the city with a simple message: don't climb the poles. And if those warnings weren't enough, the city also made sure that there was a heavy police presence. People people to tell those climbers to get down. Now, today I said that the plaintiff had the first burden, and that's because we also have a burden today. Because we're pursuing comparative negligence. Now, what that means is that we have the burden to show you it's more likely than not that it wasn't the city that caused Mr. Farnsworth's death, but that it was the combined actions of Sam Farnsworth and his friend Lanny Davidson, the two people who climbed that fence, the people who decided to climb that lamppost. Now that brings me to my second point, how people like Sam Farnsworth and Lanny Davidson responded to the city's actions. By drinking, by consuming marijuana, by taking all that in their system and going out into the streets and climbing lampposts they knew they weren't supposed to be on. And when they were told to get down, they didn't listen. They defied the police's orders. When Lanny Davidson and Sam Farnsworth approached that pole on February 9, 2025, they made a choice. To ignore every warning, to defy every order, to climb knowing they would get hurt. So at the end of today's case, I'm going to come before you again. I'm going to ask that you find the city of Philadelphia not liable. Thank you for your time.
Plaintiff, call your first witness.
Yes, Your Honor. Plaintiff calls Lanny Davidson.
You can proceed when you're ready.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, ma'am. Can you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Hi, my name is Lanny Davidson.
Could you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm born and raised here in Philly. I moved to LA. I'm a 2L at UCLA right now.
Ms. Davidson, could you tell the members of the jury what happened on February 9th of this year?
My best friend Sam and I had decided to come back home to Philly to watch the Eagles game together, the Super Bowl. We were watching at a bar. When the game ended and the Eagles won, we ran outside, and the city was just crazy. I decided to climb up a light pole. I slipped. Sam's dead.
Ma'am, why did you climb the pole?
I don't know. Look, I was put in an Eagles onesie the day I was born. I'm a big Eagles fan, and I've seen the way fans celebrate. I've seen fans climb light poles. And just in the heat of the moment, when I realized that there wasn't any grease on the poles, I decided to climb it, and there was a fence around the pole that I thought would help me climb it.
Ma'am, you said it was Super Bowl Sunday. Had you been drinking at all that day?
Yeah, I didn't feel drunk, but I had been drinking.
Did you drink anything out of the ordinary?
No.
Ms. Davidson, I want to talk about a light post, a ladder, and a landing zone. And let's start with the light posts themselves. Have you ever seen city officials doing anything to the light posts downtown on a sports game day?
Yeah, I've been to a couple of the celebrations in Philly when some of our teams have won, like when the Eagles beat the Vikings back in 2018, and I actually saw the officers grease the poles prior to the celebration.
You said you saw officers greasing the poles. That day, did you climb the lampposts?
No, I don't think I would have been able to.
What about on Super Bowl Sunday this year? Did you see city officials greasing lampposts then?
No.
The post that you climbed, did it have grease on it?
When I walked up to that pole, I checked. I didn't see any, but I even checked to see if there was grease before I decided to climb up it, and there wasn't any.
For the post without the grease, how difficult was that for you to climb?
It was easy. It wasn't slippery at all, and I was able to just climb right up.
All right, let's shift to whether you had a ladder or anything to help you get up. If you could take a look in the binder in front of you, could you try to find Exhibit 35?
I see it.
Do you recognize that?
I do.
What is it?
This shows what looks like the metal fence that was around the pole that I climbed.
Just to be clear, is the post in Exhibit 35 the exact same one that you climbed?
No, but the fence looks exactly the same.
Your Honor, the plaintiff offers Exhibit 35.
Any objection? No objection. Exhibit 35 is admitted.
And at this time, I'll publish 2 copies to the members of the jury.
Okay.
Ms. Davidson, using Exhibit 35, could you walk the members of the jury through exactly how you got up the post that night?
So it wasn't very high. I was able to just step over the fence, and then I actually stepped onto it and boosted myself up to help me climb up the pole.
Hold up. Are you saying that you climbed into the enclosed area and then straight up?
No, sir. I stepped onto the fence and then was able to boost myself up to climb up the pole.
Stepping onto the fence and then climbing up, was that difficult?
No, the fence wasn't slippery or anything. It was easy.
Ma'am, let's talk about the landing zones themselves, what was right underneath you. When you were climbing up to the top of the post, did you look down?
Yeah, I saw Sam mend the metal fence.
What happened next?
I tried to come down. It was an accident. I didn't mean to, but I slipped. I landed right on top of Sam. His head, it hit the fence, and then I rolled off of him. I've never seen that much blood in my entire life. I just started panicking. I didn't know what to do. He wouldn't wake up.
Ms. Davidson, I'm so sorry for your loss. When you were at the base of the pole after you fell, did you see any police officers at all?
Yes. They pulled me off, and pretty soon, right after I got up, they were there. They pulled me off of him.
You said you saw an officer pretty soon after you fell. How sure are you about that timeline?
I'm sure.
Ms. Davidson, when was it that you decided to climb up the post that day?
When I realized the city hadn't greased the poles.
How did you get up the post that day?
I climbed on top of the city's fence they had placed around the pole.
You said that you saw a police officer pretty soon after you fell. Did any police officers clear the metal fence or Sam away from out underneath you?
No. When I fell right on top of Sam. And that's why he hit his head on the fence. And that's why he died.
Ms. Davidson, thank you for your time. Your Honor, I have no further questions.
Cross-examination?
May I proceed?
Yes.
Good afternoon, Ms. Davidson. You weren't originally supposed to be sitting in that chair, were you? Yes. Right, you were originally supposed to be sitting right here, defense table, right? Because Sam Farnsworth's family originally sued you for your role in his death, right? But you never actually made it to court on that lawsuit, did you? Right, you settled outside of court with Mr. Farnsworth's family, and you got a pretty good deal, didn't you? You had to pay just $1, didn't you? And you had to testify against the city, right? Now that's exactly what you're doing now. You're testifying for the people that dropped a lawsuit against you, right? You're testifying for the people that dropped a lawsuit against you, right? Well, then I want to talk about some of the evidence you mentioned on direct examination.
Now it is.
Sorry about that.
No worries. Now, Miss Davidson, you said you went to a bar the day of the Super Bowl, right?
Yes.
And you did some drinking at that bar.
Yeah, Sam and I were watching the game at McGillen's old ale house down the street.
But your drinking, it didn't start at that bar, did it?
No, we got breakfast at 10 a.m.
Right, you started drinking at 10 a.m. before the Super Bowl, didn't you?
Yeah, we each had a Bloody Mary with breakfast.
The game ended at 10 p.m., right?
It did.
You were drinking the whole time, weren't you?
Yes.
12 hours of drinking before you took to the streets on February 9th, right?
I mean, it wasn't shots the whole time, but we were drinking.
Miss Davidson, I'm going to ask you to flip to Exhibit 4 in that book in front of you. My apologies, Exhibit 5, Miss Davidson. Let me know when you're there.
I'm there.
Do you recognize this document?
I do.
This is your toxicology report, isn't it?
Yes.
Because after you fell on Sam Farnsworth, they drew your blood
They did.
to see how much alcohol was in your system.
Yes.
0.07, right?
Yes.
Your Honor, the defense offers pre-marked Exhibit 5 into evidence.
Any objection?
Pursuant to the pretrial order, no objections, Your Honor.
All right, Exhibit 5 is received.
Permission to publish to the jury?
Yes.
Now, Miss Davidson, from what you could tell, Mr. Farnsworth had about as much alcohol as you had that day, right?
I would say so, yes.
But you definitely didn't catch everything he was consuming that day, right?
I mean,
Objection, Your Honor. Question calls for speculation. By definition, it's asking about what she didn't see.
Response.
Your Honor, this is within the witness's rationally based perception. She can tell me whether or not she was watching Sam Farnsworth at all points of the day.
Let you respond.
Yes, Your Honor. It calls for the witness to speculate into an assertion that Mr. Farnsworth did consume other things.
My memory, we don't have a court reporter, unfortunately. My memory of the question was that you didn't see everything he consumed. That was the gist of the question?
I
correct?
believe that was a gist, yes.
I don't know how this witness could know whether he was consuming things outside of her eyesight, so I'm going to sustain the objection to the form of the question.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Miss Davidson, you weren't watching Sam Farnsworth every second of the day, were you?
no, but we were together all day.
So you don't know if when you weren't watching him, he consumed more alcohol than you, right?
I don't.
You don't know if he consumed something like marijuana, right?
I don't, but I've known Sam since undergrad, and I've never seen him do drugs.
Well, Miss Davidson, I'm going to ask you to flip to Exhibit 4 in that binder. It should be just the page right before. Now, you there, Miss Davidson?
I am.
Now, this document says it's Sam Farnsworth's toxicology report, right?
It does.
It looks almost like yours, right?
Yes, they tested for the same things.
They tested for alcohol.
Yes.
They tested for marijuana.
Yes, cannabinoids.
But see, Sam Farnsworth, he had...
Objection, Your Honor. I don't believe the document has been admitted into evidence yet, so it'd be improper for counsel to bring specific facts from it onto the record.
Is that Exhibit 5?
Yeah, it is, Your Honor.
That was offered without objection.
I
Exhibit-
believe-
Is that Exhibit 5 or Exhibit 4?
It's Exhibit 4, Your Honor. My apologies.
Okay, I think, let's make sure that the record's clear. Exhibit
Yes.
5 was offered without objection,
Yes, Your
correct?
Honor. Yes.
And you're reading from Exhibit 4.
Exhibit 4, Your Honor, yes.
All right, are you going to offer that in evidence?
I am going to offer it.
Now?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, do you have any objection?
Yes, Your Honor. Under Rule 403, may I be heard?
Yes.
Your Honor, the document is the toxicology report of Sam Farnsworth. All we've heard today is that he stood at the base of the pole and looked up. He didn't make any irrational decisions. He didn't make the decision to climb up. The document would prejudice the members of the jury against him because it shows his blood alcohol content and the fact that he was having cannabis. That would just be a prejudicial effect for the members of the jury. It doesn't have substantial probative value.
What's the prejudice of the jury hearing that he consumed alcohol and or drugs that night?
The jury may make a bad inference about Mr. Farnsworth based on a 0.1 BAC. Counsel brought it up in her opening statement. I believe that's what she wants them to take.
Why is she not permitted to argue to the jury that the decedent did something bad as a result of consuming those substances?
Because there's no specific irrational actions that counsel will be able to lay foundation to tie these two. All we've heard and all we will hear is that he stood at the bottom of the pole. And actually, I could ask Ms. Davidson and prove that Mr. Farnsworth actually asked her not to climb up the pole.
What is your argument? We're a constructive sidebar, so they're not hearing this.
Yes, Your Honor.
What is your argument going to be with respect to the decedent's consumption of alcohol and marijuana?
Well, Your Honor, we're pursuing comparative negligence specifically for the actions of Lanny Davidson and Sam Farnsworth today. And so the fact that Sam Farnsworth consumed both cannabinoids and alcohol means that he was more likely to act recklessly. And additionally, Sam Farnsworth made irrational decisions that day, if I may proffer.
Yeah, and I think, let me ask a more pointed question that
Sure.
hopefully you're about to get to, which is, I think we can debate whether the consumption of those substances is negligent or reckless or somewhere in between. But I think to counsel's point, how are you going to show, what's your argument to the jury going to be that that negligence, if it existed, was a substantial factor in causing the accident?
Because, Your Honor, Sam Farnsworth stepped over that fence as well and stood in that restricted zone. And I'm about to question Ms. Davidson about that very fact. He made that choice after consuming all that alcohol and the marijuana, and that's what led him to make such a reckless choice, to go over a barrier the city had put there to keep him safe.
Okay, last word.
Yes, Your Honor. Simply that he didn't make any reckless decision. He did climb a fence, but counsel wouldn't be able to connect alcohol or marijuana to that decision.
Okay, I think that's a matter for weight, not admissibility, and you can certainly submit the argument that you're making to me to the jury in closing arguments, or redirect on it, or both. So I'm going to overrule the objection.
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Davidson, this document says that Sam Farnsworth consumed more alcohol than you, right?
I'm not sure about more, but his blood alcohol is higher.
It's higher by 0.03, right?
Yes,
It also says he had marijuana in his system, doesn't it?
it does.
Right, well, then I want to talk about what you and Sam Farnsworth did after drinking that night.
Okay,
You go out onto the street to celebrate the Super Bowl win, don't you?
right when the clock struck 0.
You see a light pole and think, I'm going to climb it.
Yeah.
But you couldn't walk just right up to the fence, to the pole like you could in other celebrations, could you?
No, there was a fence.
Right, there was something in your way preventing you from going right up close to that pole.
Yes,
A fence.
that's right.
Now, I want to be clear because opposing counsel had some other names for it, but it wasn't a ladder, was it?
Objection, Your Honor, to argumentative, to just any commentary on the trial beyond just asking questions to the witness.
I think you're technically correct, but I kind of liked it, so I'm going to overrule it.
Yes, Your Honor.
That fence, it wasn't a ladder, was it?
It wasn't a ladder, no.
You knew it was a fence,
Yes,
and you knew it had been put there to keep you out.
yeah,
But even though you knew that, you made the choice to climb over it, right?
I did. I mean, the Eagles won the Super Bowl.
Your excuse for climbing over that fence is that the Eagles won the Super Bowl, Ms. Davidson?
There were so many people on the streets, and it was a mix of chaos and electricity. I mean, it sounds silly now, but in the moment, it sweeps you up.
So you're swept up, you climb over that fence, and Sam Farnsworth follows after you, right?
Yeah, he was telling me not to climb it.
When you fell from the top of that pole, Sam Farnsworth was inside the fenced-off area, wasn't he?
He was.
When Sam Farnsworth hit his head on that fence, he was inside the fenced-off area, wasn't he?
I had asked him to spot me. So he came inside. He came inside the fenced area, and when I fell, I hit him.
Thank you, Ms. Davidson. Your Honor, nothing further.
Redirect.
Yes, Your Honor.
Proceed.
Ms. Davidson, counsel asked you about your settlement agreement with the Farnsworths. Have you already made that agreement?
We have.
Does it say anything about what you have to say in trial today?
No, it's said and done, no matter what happens.
Did you tell the Farnsworths that you would or wouldn't say anything in particular?
Of course not.
Would you have testified in this trial if they hadn't entered into that agreement with you?
Of course I would have. Sam was my best friend.
Counsel also asked you about just how much you had to drink that night. Was it anything out of the ordinary for a game day?
Not for me. And again, I didn't feel drunk, and I just got swept up in the excitement of the Super Bowl.
Counsel showed you your toxicology reports from that night. What was your BAC?
0.07.
Is that above or below the legal limit to drive?
As far as I know, that's 0.01 below the legal limit.
Counsel also asked you about the decisions that Mr. Farnsworth made that night. Did he tell you anything as you climbed the pole?
He told me to stop. He begged me to stop.
Ma'am, if someone were to say that Mr. Farnsworth was egging you on the whole time, would you agree with that?
No. Sam had asked me not to climb the pole, but I checked to see if it was greased, and it wasn't, and so I did it.
Ms. Davidson, thank you for your time. Your Honor, I have no further questions.
Can we let her go? No recall. All right. Ms. Davidson, you're excused.
Thank you.
Next witness.
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff calls Ryan Debnath.
Take your time, Mr. Debnath. I'm glad this trial wasn't on the 5th floor. That seems like it would have been a problem for you.
Oh, and these elevators. Terrible. I'm ready.
Proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Can you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Sure. Hello there. My name is Ryan Debnath.
What do you do for a living?
I'm a safety consultant.
Do you know why you're here?
Yes. I was hired to review the decisions that the city made leading up to Super Bowl 40, specifically in connection with the death of Mr. Sam Farnsworth.
Sir, you said you're a safety consultant. Could you describe your educational background?
Absolutely. So I started at UCLA about 1 million years ago. After I graduated, I went to the Police Academy of Portland. I was a beat cop, then a captain, then a commander, then the chief, and then I left.
You said that you were hired to review the city's actions in this case. What facts did you review?
I reviewed all of the evidence that was available in this case. That's every single exhibit. That was plenty of photographs, many videos, depositions, things like that.
Did you use a reliable principle or method when conducting that analysis?
Absolutely. It's got a very original name. We call it a comparative analysis.
Could you describe what a comparative analysis is?
Sure. Essentially, what we do is document review. We look at the actions the city took, and we compare them to the amount of incidents that happened at these kinds of events to see if we can make any associations from how their activities led to those incidents.
Did you reliably apply that method to the facts you reviewed?
Of course. I reliably applied it just like I do in every case I review.
Sir, what certifications do you have as a public safety consultant?
I'm certified by APSA, which is the American Public Safety Association.
All right, let's jump into your actual review in this case. You said you looked at every exhibit. Did any facts stick out to you in particular?
Absolutely. There were three things that really jumped out to me. First, there was the lack of grease on the poles. Then it was the small fences that the city put up around the poles. And finally, the fact that the police didn't move hazards out of the way for what would eventually be the landing zone.
All right, let's talk about those three things one at a time. And let's start with the light posts themselves. Did you review any information about the city greasing the poles in the past?
Absolutely. I'm aware that the city has greased the poles for many sporting events. It's stretching all the way back to 2018.
How many sporting events in total?
4 by my count.
What happened when the city did grease the poles?
Well, you still saw reports of some people climbing, but not very many. You saw an average of 13 climbers per major event, and never any more than 15 climbers per event.
You said that the city did grease the poles between 2018 and 2023. Where in 2025 did they change tack?
They did. It was at the 2025 NFC qualifier. If you don't like football, that's like the Super Bowl qualifying match.
When they didn't grease the poles for the NFC Championship, what happened?
The consequences were stark. There was not 13 or 15 climbers, but this time 75. In addition, while in the past there had never been any injuries reported from falling off these poles, this time, well, somebody died.
How long was this year's Super Bowl when Sam Farnsworth lost his life after that game you just mentioned, the NFC Championship?
Well, that's 2 weeks later.
What did the city do for the Super Bowl?
Well, the same thing they did 2 weeks before. They still did not grease.
All right, let's shift from the light posts themselves to how people were able to get up. Because you mentioned that you reviewed information about some fences. Could you describe what those were to the members of the jury?
Yes, absolutely. I saw a couple of pictures of the actual lampposts that lined the road outside. See, at the Super Bowl, the city had put up these small metal fences around each and every one of those poles.
You said small. About how tall?
Just a couple of feet, not too big.
Were people able to climb on them?
Yes, and that's the important part. See, because those fences were so small, they were small enough that, well, most regular adults or teenagers would have been able to climb on top of them. And they did.
Are you familiar with what Lanny Davidson did that night?
Well, that's exactly it. Lanny Davidson walked up to one of those fences, climbed on top of the fence, and then used it to continue climbing up to the pole itself.
All right, let's shift to that third thing that you mentioned. You talked about the landing zones. What was underneath Miss Davidson when she fell?
Right, so exactly. When she fell, well, she crashed into Mr. Farnsworth. And Mr. Farnsworth, he crashed into one of those metal fences below.
Have you read the report of Officer Joe Jones, sir?
Absolutely.
Does Officer Jones describe what he saw that night?
Play by play.
Does he describe what Lanny Davidson and Sam Farnsworth did?
Absolutely, he does.
Can you break down exactly what he did when he saw the two of them?
Sure. The officer describes that from a couple of 100 feet away.
Sure. Mr. Debnath. Response?
I'm happy to direct the witness to Exhibit 6, which is the police report. Officer Jones will also testify later in trial. This witness has reviewed the officer's report. He'd be able to testify accurately to its contents.
Right, but the fact that the officer is going to testify is separate from what's contained in his report, no?
Yes, Your Honor, but if counsel has a discrepancy that she believes the witness mistestifies to or wants to clarify when the officer comes into court, counsel would be able to do that. If Your Honor would like, I can direct this witness to the officer's report.
Well, I'm going to sustain the objection because I think counsel's correct. The rule requires you to present the document to the witness rather than, I mean, it's a police report, so I have concerns that he's quoting it accurately. So present him with the document and we can take it from there. So sustained.
Yes, Your Honor. Sir, could you turn to Exhibit 6? It should be in the binder in front of you.
Sure.
Just let me know when you're there.
5, 6, I'm there.
Does Officer Jones say that he went up the pole and cleared the landing zone?
Right, so I'm looking at the second page in the summary where he talks about what he did. Well, no, he doesn't talk about clearing the landing zone at all.
What did he do?
Well, from a couple of 100 feet away, he says he sees somebody climbing the pole, so he runs over. Then when he gets to the base of the pole, he looks up and he yells and he says, "Get down from there," just like that.
What happened next?
Well, Miss Davidson did get down from there.
Happy to do that, Your Honor. We'll move Exhibit 6 into evidence.
Do you have an objection? All right. Well, in that case, Exhibit 6 is admitted.
Yes, Your Honor. Sir, did the officer tell Miss Davidson to stay up while Sam was still underneath?
No. Well, Mr. Farnsworth was still right down below. Well, the officer says, "Get down," and she does, or at least, well, she tries. That's when she falls on him.
Mr. Debnath, now that we've talked about the 3 facts that you found particularly important, could you tell the members of the jury what your overall conclusion in this case was?
Yes. My overarching conclusion was that the city's decisions either caused or contributed to Mr. Farnsworth's death. They didn't grease the poles for climbing. They put out the fences that were easily climbed. And they didn't remove the hazards, ultimately the fence that he was killed on.
Thank you, sir. Your Honor, I have nothing further.
Cross?
Good afternoon. How are you?
Mic on? I'm doing well. Now, Mr. Debnath, I just want to make sure I have your conclusions right before we get going, all right?
Okay.
It's your opinion that greasing the poles worked, right?
To a degree, yes.
But that fencing didn't.
Right again.
Now, the reason you think that greasing didn't work, it's not based on any studies, is it?
Not at any large-scale studies. See, there's not enough major events like this to have a great sample size. It's just based on the data that the city has collected about how many people climb when there is versus when there isn't.
All right, well, I want to talk about that data. Mr. Kramer, can you help me move this whiteboard? Mr. Debnath, can you see this all right?
Just fine, thank you.
All right. I want to take us back to 2008.
Let's do it.
There's a Phillies game, right?
Many in 2008.
Right. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to write 2008. How many poles in the city greased that year?
No.
I'm going to go ahead and write grease. Put a big X.
No grease.
Now, the next game you have data for, it's for 2018, isn't it?
Yes, that's 10 years after.
An NFC championship, right?
NFC Championship.
And this time there's grease, isn't there?
Yes, grease.
Big check mark. Now there's another game in 2018 with grease, isn't there?
Correct. The Super Bowl, actually.
Right, the Super Bowl. Go ahead and go write 2018 again and a big check mark.
Works for me.
Now there's another game the city greased the poles for, right?
A couple of more, actually, yes.
In 2022
Right.
and in 2023, right?
Bingo.
Add big check marks to those too. Now, aside from whether or not the poles were actually greased, You actually have data of how many people climbed the poles on those days, right?
That's absolutely true, yes.
Back in 2008, without Greece, it's 5 people.
5 people.
In 2018, it's up to 10 people.
Right.
In 2022, or in 2018 again, it's up to 12.
12 it is.
And then in 2022 and 2023, it's up to 15.
15 and 15.
Now, 2025 is when the city decides not to grease the poles again.
Right. The first time since 2008, no grease. A big X up there.
Right. And there's a lot of people that climb the poles that day, right?
Exactly. The number jumps from 15 at the most in the prior decade all the way to 75.
Right. The number jumps all the way up to 75 when the poles aren't greased.
Yes, it does.
But then there's another game in 2025 that the poles aren't greased for, right?
That's the Super Bowl.
The Super Bowl, right. Putting a big X. From your review of all the materials in this case, you only found evidence that 2 people climbed at the Super Bowl in 2025, right?
Right. Well, it's because I was specifically looking at this case. That's what I focused on. We're talking about Davidson in Farnsworth.
But you'd never seen any other reports that said more than 2 people climbed light poles at the 2025 Super Bowl, did you?
Not in my document review, no.
Objection, Your Honor, to more prejudicial than, to substantially misleading under Rule 403. May I be heard?
Sure.
Your Honor, counsel's comparing apples to oranges between the top 7 or 8 lines on this demonstrative and the bottom one. For the top, she's comparing the total amount of reports that the city received of people climbing the poles, that is, anyone who phoned into the police office to tell them that there was someone climbing a pole. And then on the bottom line, she's just using a number from Mr. Dabnath's personal review of this case. Of course, there aren't any other people climbing the poles mentioned in his review of the documents in this case, so to put them side by side is substantially misleading.
Response, Your Honor?
Yeah.
Well, there actually were other people outside of this case that climbed and that were in the materials that Mr. Debnath reviewed. One of them, of course, was Lanny Davidson, who climbed the pole. But then Mr. Debnath also reviewed a video, if I may proffer,
Sure.
that shows someone completely unrelated to Lanny Davidson and Sam Farnsworth climbing a pole. That is the only evidence that Mr. Debnath found that showed people climbing poles at the 2025 Super Bowl.
Last word.
Yes, Your Honor, all that goes to show is that she's comparing apples to slightly red oranges. They're still very different. Just because there happened to be one other bleed over doesn't mean there weren't countless others in the documents he didn't review.
Slightly red oranges, not just oranges. I think all of those concerns go to weight, not admissibility, and I think her question was tailored to the materials that he looked at. And so I don't think there's anything misleading about the question. You're free to clear that up on redirect to the extent that you can within the local rules, and you're also free to do that to argue in closing with respect to the argument you're making now. So I'm going to overrule it.
Yes, Your Honor.
Now, Mr. Debnath, 75 down to 2, that's a big jump, isn't it?
Right, but to be clear, 2 does not encapsulate the totality of reports. Just what I reviewed in this case. It's quite narrow.
Well, you reviewed a police report, right?
Yes, I reviewed a police report.
And you reviewed the deposition of a public safety director for the city.
That as well.
Both of them did investigations into pole climbing at the 2025 Super Bowl, right?
Right, but they never mentioned the total number, unfortunately.
Well, they each mentioned one person, right?
Right, that's 2 people in those 2 documents.
Right, 2 people. So we go down from 75 to 2 in the materials you reviewed, right?
If we're just talking about these materials, yes.
Now, I noticed that they have one thing in common on here. They're both numbers from years that the city didn't grease the poles, right?
Both those years, they did not grease the poles.
But there's one thing that the city did differently between the NFC Championship in 2025 and the Super Bowl, right?
Give me a clue.
They had a fence, don't they?
They added a fence, that's true.
They had a fence after 75 people climbed the poles when they're ungreased.
Right.
The number's at 2 for the next game.
Well, not the same number. The number written up there, I guess.
2 is the lowest number of people climbing poles since before 2008.
I guess, I mean, again, that's not the total number of people who climbed poles.
But of the 2 investigations into pole climbing at the 2025 Super Bowl that you reviewed, they only found 2 people that climb poles, right?
Objection asked and answered.
Oh, the witness is evading the question, so I'm going to allow it one more time, and then feel free to raise your objection.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Debnath, do you need me to re-ask my question?
No, I think I got it. From what I reviewed, just the 2, yeah.
And the only difference is the fence the city has, right?
Right.
But I also noticed there's a bit of a trend here from 2008 to 2023. All the poles are greased here.
Yes.
And even though the poles are greased, the number of people climbing them keeps getting higher and higher and higher.
Yes, it does.
So I just want to make sure I have this clear. You said that the greasing the poles worked,
Right.
but the number of people climbing them increased.
Right, they went slightly higher. We can see that it worked because of the jump to 75 when you take it away.
But I want to be clear, the goal of greasing those poles was to prevent people from climbing them, right?
Absolutely.
And as you grease the poles, more people climb them.
At first, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Debnath. Your Honor, nothing further.
Redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Debnath, counsel just asked you about the increase in people climbing the poles while they were greased. How big was that increase?
It was never more than 2 or 3 more people per year.
Then the city didn't grease the poles earlier this year. How big was the increase?
50. 60? 60.
Sir, counsel also asked you about how many people climbed the light post total during the Super Bowl of this year. Do you know?
No, we don't have data on that, unfortunately.
Hang on a second. Counsel, is that opinion contained within this witness's report or deposition or anything that he reviewed?
Which opinion, Your Honor?
That there are no reports beyond, there are no reports of how many people climbed the poles on the day of the Super Bowl? That was your question, right?
Yes, Your Honor. So the very last question was just asking for whether he has knowledge of other reports. I expect he'll say that he doesn't have.
Okay, is that testimony contained within his expert report or his deposition, or explicitly somewhere in content that he reviewed?
I don't believe it's explicitly stated, Your Honor. I'm just clarifying that when counsel asked about the reports, or excuse me, the reports he did hear, that was just in the contents documents he's reviewed.
Okay, you can ask that question, but that's not the question you just asked. I'm going to strike the question in any testimony. If you want to carefully tailor your question to things that are contained within this report, namely what that 2 represents, then you can ask that, but you can't ask him for things that aren't in his report or deposition. So
Yes, Your Honor.
I'm going to strike the question and answer proceed.
Yes, Your Honor, understood. Sir, it says 2 here. Based on your conversation with Ms. Banfalvi a moment ago, what do you believe that refers to?
Right, that refers to the documents that I reviewed, how many people I saw climbing poles.
Thank you, sir. Nothing further.
Recross?
No recross, Your Honor.
All right. Anything else from the plaintiff?
No, Your Honor, the plaintiff rests.
All right. Why don't we do a time check? You ready?
Yep. We have 17 minutes left with plaintiff, 20:44 left with defendant.
All right. Let's take a 5-minute break. It's 10 after 4. Let's come back at 4:15. Okay?
Yes, Your Honor.
Your Honor, just before we break, actually, can I just preserve this demonstrative for closing argument?
Yeah, let's mark that as defense exhibit A. Okay?
Yes, thank you.
there a certain way you want me to count down for the rest of your?
Oh, how much time do we have left again?
17 minutes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, count down. If you could count down from 9 for crosses, that'd be great. And then if you get to the bottom, count down from 10 from crosses, maybe. 10 for crosses. 7 for crosses. Okay, thank you. I'm excited to find out.
It's pretty telling that nobody's danced for me. It's probably because I had basketball shorts on earlier. All right. Defense, you putting on a case on? Shocker. All right, let's do it. All right.
May I proceed?
Yes.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Could you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Hi, I'm Walker Edwards.
What do you do for a living, Miss Edwards?
I'm the Director of Public Safety for the City of Philadelphia.
What does that role, Director of Public Safety, entail?
So all the major events we have around town, street festivals, football games, things like that, I'm in charge of making sure they go off without a hitch, that everyone stays safe.
How long have you been working in this position?
I worked for our city for close to 2 decades, and I've been in this specific role as the director for about 9 years.
Before you got involved working public safety for the city, did you get any degrees?
Of course, I got my undergrad, my bachelor's from UCLA, and then I got a master's in public policy from Drexel.
What about public or professional certifications? Did you have any of those?
I do. I'm a FEMA certified emergency manager. I'm also a certified crowd manager from a National Fire Association.
Well, Miss Edwards, do you know why we asked you to court today?
I do. I was in charge of the safety of precautions for the Super Bowl this year. Someone lost their life that night after climbing a lamppost.
Who was that someone?
His name was Sam Farnsworth.
Well, Miss Edwards, I want to talk a little bit more about Mr. Farnsworth's death. Do you know how he died at the Super Bowl?
I do. After the win, everyone took to Broad Street to celebrate, and like they always do, people were climbing everything in sight. Cars, buses, and lampposts. Sam got to the top of his and lost his grip. Or excuse me, his friend climbed to the top of one and lost his grip. He fell off the post and landed on Sam.
Climbing lampposts, is this typical behavior for Philadelphians after they win a game?
As strange as it might sound, you could probably call it tradition. It's how we celebrate.
So is this something you take into consideration when you're making safety plans for the city?
Of course. We know people want to have fun. We have our precautions to make sure that they do it safely. That's all.
Did you take it into consideration for the safety plan for February 9th, 2025?
We did.
How many safety measures did you have in place that night?
A ton, but 3 that were most important. A public awareness campaign, fences around every post in the city, and increased police presence.
All right, well, I want to walk through each of those safety measures one by one, starting with that public awareness campaign. What was its goal?
So for years, we've been saying don't climb the lampposts, but it didn't seem to be working. We launched a social media campaign to appeal specifically to younger people. Hopefully they'd see that and know not to climb, that it was dangerous.
Where on social media did you launch this campaign?
Everywhere, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
Would you recognize an Instagram post from that public awareness campaign if I were to show you one now?
I think I would.
All right, can you go ahead and flip to Exhibit 33 in that binder in front of you?
Yes.
Let me know when you're there.
I'm here.
What are we looking at, Miss Edwards?
So this is one of the Instagram posts that we launched as part of our campaign.
Is it a true, accurate, and unmarked copy of one of those Instagram posts?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, the defense offers Exhibit 33.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor, hearsay. There are several statements on the right-hand side of the document that could be used for the truth of the matter asserted.
All right, let's go to sidebar. Counsel, are there any specific statements that we're talking about, or is it the whole thing? Or
There's 2 statements we have particular concern about. We also don't know about other statements. We don't know why counsel is offering them. The two statements we have particular concern are the caption itself describing the special message for Eagles fans and Philly residents. It's totally all right for counsel to ask the witness about her own personal knowledge about this advertisement campaign, but any information from an outside statement, that wouldn't be proper. And then second, to the like count, demonstrating how many people liked the message, and therefore they could be using that for the truth of the matter to show how many people saw it.
Okay, so a couple things. You have no objection to anything else in the exhibit other than don't climb through Super Bowl Sunday in the first, in the caption, right? And then the likes.
Yes,
Those
Your
are the
Honor.
only two things we're talking about. Okay. Why don't we take those one at a time? Let's start with the caption. Counsel, what's your response?
A couple responses for the caption, Your Honor. First, don't climb light poles is a command. There's no truth value contained in that statement. It's not hearsay. As for the rest of the statement, Philadelphia Mayor Rachel Holt has a special message for Eagles fans and Philly residents ahead of the Super Bowl Sunday. We're not offering that for the truth of the matter asserted that the mayor actually did have a special message, but we're offering it to show notice, that this was the notice from the mayor given to citizens with the command, don't climb the light poles.
All right, last chance on this one. Why is this not used for notice to indicate to the plaintiff's decedent and to the person who climbed the pole that they shouldn't engage in these behaviors?
Yes, Your Honor. That statement is descriptive, not prescriptive. It describes a fact of what the mayor said, that there was an advertisement campaign. Again, they can have this witness testify to that on their own personal knowledge, but this is an out-of-court statement describing that campaign. That statement is not a command.
Right, but I don't want to make counsel's argument for her, but isn't the point that they posted something so people could see it, like the two individuals we're talking about?
Yes, Your Honor, and this statement is establishing that fact of the existence of the
No,
campaign.
but isn't this the post? It's not establishing that there was a post. This is the post.
The left-hand side that's the actual campaign. The right-hand side is a statement about the campaign's existence.
So your position is that the photo on the left side with the words "Don't climb the light poles, attention Philly" is the campaign, but the caption that this news site posted that says the mayor says has a special message is not part of the campaign.
Yes, the right-hand side is describing the fact of the campaign's existence, which is not the campaign itself.
Okay, I understand your argument, and I think it's potentially a close call, but I don't really see any prejudice in letting in the left side and not letting in the right side if we're going to let the left side in, particularly if they're going to hear what the campaign was. So I'm going to overrule the objection as to that statement. What about the likes? What is your position on the likes?
Well, Your Honor, the likes don't have a human proponent of the statement, and therefore they can't be hearsay. It's a requirement of 802.
Well, aren't the likes necessarily an assertion by someone clicking the like button, or no?
No, Your Honor, the like count on a post is generated automatically by a machine. It's not generated by individuals.
Right, but isn't it generated by somebody pushing a button saying "I like this post"?
The like count on the post, Your Honor?
In other words, if I click like on an Instagram post, doesn't the like count increase by one by virtue of me clicking like?
Yes, Your Honor, if you were to like an Instagram post, it would show up as one like if no one else had liked it before you, of course. But the fact of it being displayed on this post, it's not being generated by a human. It is being generated by Instagram and the application, but not by a human proponent.
So, counsel, I have a specific question for you. The hearsay rule requires there to be an out-of-court assertion of something. So what is your position with respect to what the like count is asserting by way of a truth?
It asserts how many people have seen the post because it's a prerequisite to being able to like it that you've seen it.
Okay, and so your concern is that the like count of 3,000 and change asserts that 3,000 and change people saw the post?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, and what's your position on that, and then I'll rule.
Your Honor, I maintain that it isn't hearsay. The fact that 3,000 people saw a post isn't hearsay because the way that that fact is being communicated isn't being communicated by an out-of-court statement produced by a proponent, a human proponent.
Okay, I'm gonna permit the document to come in its entirety. I don't agree that that's what the like count asserts, and I think it's debatable whether there's a human whether there's a human speaking with respect to that like count, but I just don't think there's any prejudice in this like count coming in, so I'm gonna permit it.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Permission to publish this to the jury?
Granted.
Now, Ms. Edwards, for every single post that the city put out, was the message always the same?
Yes, we were telling people, don't climb the light poles. It's dangerous.
All right, well, now that we've talked about the public awareness campaign, I want to talk about the second measure you took, fences around the light posts. Can you describe what those fences look like?
Of course, they were a couple feet off the ground, around all the fences, and symmetrical in place to make sure nobody could unlock them or break them apart.
What was the point of putting those fences around the lampposts in the city?
We were trying to barricade them, keep people from jumping over them and climbing onto those posts.
How many lampposts in Center City had those barricades on the night of February 9, 2025?
Every single one.
In addition to those fences, did you grease the poles the night of the Super Bowl?
No, of course not.
Had you greased them in the past?
We stopped doing it in 2025 due to concerns that it was encouraging people to climb them.
What do you mean it was encouraging people to climb them?
So social media had kind of sensationalized that people were chanting grease the posts to sort of indicate that our teams were doing well. But it got treated like a challenge, made more and more young people want to climb those posts.
Objection, Your Honor, to speculation as to more and more young people being incentivized to climb the posts by social media.
Response?
Your Honor, the witness testified that grease the poles became a chant at games, encouraging people to climb those poles. That is contained in the fact that became a well-known chant at the games.
Your Honor, this witness made a connection between social media posts and young people being incentivized to climb the poles. That speculates into the mindsets of all the people climbing the poles as to why they did it.
Yeah, I think the exact phrase that the witness used was it made people, quote, want to climb the poles. So I tend to agree with counsel. I'm going to sustain the objection and strike that portion of the testimony.
Yes, Your Honor.
So at the end of the day, why did you choose not to grease the poles in addition to those fences?
We believed that it was encouraging people to climb those posts, that it was a challenge, and that the numbers were rising, making things more dangerous.
All right, well, now that we've talked about 2 of your safety measures, I want to talk about the last one, police presence. Were you in charge of the number of police officers that were dispatched on the night of the Super Bowl?
I was.
How many officers did you dispatch?
Close to 200.
Now, were these 200 officers just wandering up and down the streets that night?
No, they all had a few blocks that they were in charge of, taking care of, watching, and monitoring.
Approximately how many officers would there be in, say, a 2x2 block square?
It, of course, varied on which blocks we're talking about, but it was about 40 on average.
And what was the point of having these police officers stationed in these 2x2 block squares?
It was supposed to be a deterrent, and to stop people from doing that when they saw police officers, we would hope that they'd be less likely to misbehave. And on top of that, if people did still continue to choose to climb, those officers were supposed to stop them.
In the aftermath of the 2025 Super Bowl, did you find any evidence that officers did try to intervene when people tried to climb the poles?
We did.
In what case was that?
Mr. Farnsworth's.
And what officer intervened in Mr. Farnsworth trying to climb the pole?
An officer, police officer named Joe Jones. He said to get down.
Did Lanny Davidson and Sam Farnsworth listen?
Objection, Your Honor. Best evidence, same grounds as counsel's objections from earlier. The witness is referencing Exhibit 6. We'd ask that counsel direct her to Exhibit 6.
Are you referencing Exhibit 6?
I believe the witness is pulling her knowledge from Exhibit 6. I can ask her to flip to the page in the binder if that would be more appropriate for the court.
So your question was, did they listen? And I'm not
Yes.
entirely clear based on the context as to what they're supposed to be listening to. What was the testimony you're connecting that to?
The witness testified that a police officer had intervened when Sam Farnsworth and Lanny Davidson tried to climb a light post.
And that's based on the police report.
Yes.
All right, so to the extent that she's testifying based on the police report, which it sounds like there's an agreement on that, she's got to be presented with the document. So
Yes, Your Honor.
either ask her a different question or present her with the report.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Edwards, can you flip to Exhibit 6 in that binder in front of you?
Yes, I'm here.
What is that document?
So this is Officer Jones' police report. He describes the incident in which Sam Farnsworth passed away.
In that document, does it say whether or not Sam Farnsworth and Lanny Davidson listened to the police when they told them to get off the poles?
So on the second page, right towards the middle, it talks about how Officer Jones did tell them to get down, but that Lanny Davidson didn't.
Thank you, Ms. Edwards. Your Honor, nothing further.
Cross?
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Picking up right where you left off, you referenced Officer Jones's report, right?
I did.
You said Officer Jones told Sam Farnsworth to do something, right?
Says that he saw those people on the lamppost, that he yelled to get down.
Just to be clear, Officer Jones didn't tell Sam Farnsworth to do anything, right?
No, it was Lanny Davidson that was on the top of that post.
Officer Jones just yelled up at Lanny Davidson, true?
Based on this report.
Didn't move Sam Farnsworth out of the way, right?
Doesn't say anything about that in this report.
Didn't clear the metal fence, right?
It doesn't say that here.
Now that we've cleared that up, I want to discuss the city's decision not to grease the light posts earlier this year. Because the fact is, you did grease the light posts from 2018 until 2023, right?
We did. At the time, we thought it was working.
Ma'am, in 2018, for the NFC Championship game, you greased the light posts for the first time, true?
Yes, that's right.
You received 10 reports of people climbing the poles, right?
We did.
And then you greased them again for the Super Bowl, right?
That's right. The number rose.
12 reports?
That's the number, yes.
And then in 2022, you greased the light post again, right?
We did.
Received 15 reports?
That's right, a slight increase.
And then in 2023, you greased the light posts one last time. Is that true?
That's right.
And you received 15 reports once again, true?
The same number as last year. That's correct.
And so as you mentioned a moment ago, you saw that the number was increasing, right? From 10 to 12.
That's right, from 10 to 12, 12 to 15, and stayed at 15.
And so you saw this increase from 10 all the way up to 15, and so you decided, well, we better change strategy, right?
Of course. We thought it was because of the sensationalization I was talking about.
And then in 2025, you didn't grease the light posts for the NFC Championship game this year, right?
We didn't. We thought it made things more dangerous, so we chose not to.
And when you didn't grease the light posts in January of this year, the amount of reports went up to 75, right?
For the NFC game, yes. We stopped greasing it and didn't add additional safety measures to those posts. It was a mistake.
So when you saw the reports go up from 10 to 15, you decided to change strategy, right?
Of course.
Stopped greasing the posts, right?
That's right.
But then when you stopped greasing the posts and you saw the number go all the way up to 75, you decided not to grease the posts again, right?
That's right. The grease made things more dangerous.
You said the grease made things more dangerous. Ma'am, for these numbers, when you did grease the poles, you received 0 reports of anyone getting hurt, right?
That's right.
So you just told the members of the jury the grease made things more dangerous despite receiving 0 reports of anyone getting hurt ever when you greased the poles, true?
That's what I said. The number kept rising. We were afraid things were going to get worse.
You said a moment ago the grease made things more dangerous. When you didn't grease the poles, you received a report of someone dying, right?
His name was Nasir.
That was January of this year, right?
For the NFC game. That's right.
The reports of people climbing the poles went up 5-fold. You received a report of a person dying, and you decided not to grease the poles again for this year's Super Bowl, true?
Because of the risks for the challenge I identified? Yes.
You're aware that Sam Farnsworth died the night of the Super Bowl, true?
He did.
Because Lanny Davidson climbed a pole that wasn't greased, true?
That's right.
Let's talk about why the city might have made that decision. Because the fact is, ma'am, greasing the poles is expensive, true?
Costs about $10,000 to do it for our city.
$10,000 in labor, paying for the grease itself, right?
That's correct.
Got to clean it up.
We do. We couldn't just leave it there.
Let's talk about another decision that you might have made because of the cost involved. Because you told us about the police officers you hired that night, right?
I did.
200 officers total, true?
That's right.
For a crowd of 100,000 people, man.
That's right.
That's one officer for every 500 fans in the crowd, right?
That's correct.
You could have hired more.
It's possible. We allocated our money to different life-saving measures that night.
You decided not to hire more police officers because you couldn't justify the cost, man.
That's exactly right. We allocated the money to different life-saving measures, like free public transportation to avoid DUIs, getting cars off the streets so people wouldn't climb them, things like that.
Couldn't justify the cost of the officers' salaries, yes or no?
No, that's right. We couldn't justify it for those officers.
Thank you, ma'am. Nothing further.
Redirect? All right, I think, there you go.
Ms. Edwards, what was the safety protocol in place when there were 75 people that climbed the poles?
We didn't grease them, but we didn't put up the fences either.
Is that the same protocol that was in place for the Super Bowl 11 days later?
Of course not. We added the fences as a barricade to stop people from doing that.
Thank you, Ms. Edwards. Your Honor, nothing further.
All right, do you have any recross?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, proceed.
Ma'am, this is a picture of the fence that you added, right?
Could you give me a number? I'm sorry.
Looks like Exhibit 35.
Yes, that's right.
Looks like it's about 2 to 3 feet tall, wouldn't you say?
That's right.
You know that Lanny Davidson just climbed right on the fence, right?
I believe that's what happened.
And you know that Sam Farnsworth died because he hit his head against it, true?
After Lanny fell onto him, that's where he landed.
He landed on the metal fence you put at the bottom of the pole that people climb as a tradition.
That's right.
Nothing further.
Can we let her go?
Yes, we can, Your Honor. And just, I want to inquire with opposing counsel about the demonstrative,
What are you inquiring?
if they would like it to be taken down or if I can move it off to the side.
Let's move it off to the side and let's mark it as Plaintiff Exhibit A, okay?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you.
You're excused. Before we have our next witness called, why don't we just do a time check, just so you guys know what you have going into the last witness, so.
Yeah, so plaintiff, you have 10 minutes, 43 seconds remaining. Defendant, you have 12 minutes, 22 seconds.
Thank you.
All right,
The defense calls Joe Jones to the stand. May I proceed, Your Honor?
yes.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Could you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Certainly. My name is Joe Jones.
What do you do for a living, Mr. Jones?
I'm a police officer with the City of Philadelphia.
How long have you been one?
I joined the patrol office in 2018. I've been working there ever since.
Mr. Jones, do you know why you're here today?
Yes, ma'am. I was here twice today. Earlier, I was responsible for rescuing an elderly gentleman who was stuck in the elevators in this very building. He was a very nice fella. But currently, I'm testifying in the trial where a young man named Sam Farnsworth, he passed away on February 9th, 2025. I was the first responder.
All right, well, I want you to take us to that night then, February 9th, 2025.
Yes, ma'am.
Around what time did your shift start?
1400 hours, it's 2 p.m.
Were there lots of people on the street at this time?
No, ma'am. Before the Philadelphia Eagles took the field, there was only a few individuals walking around.
What about when the game finished?
When the game finished, it was pandemonium. Thousands and thousands of fans started walking around Broad Street.
Were any of those fans climbing things?
Yes, ma'am. I saw with my own eyes several fans start climbing parked cars, and I got involved quickly.
What do you mean you got involved?
I told them to get down immediately, and they did, you best believe.
Did you see any people climbing light poles that night?
Yes, ma'am. Around 2200 hours and 35 minutes, I noticed from across the distance a young woman climbing one of the light posts.
What did you see when you saw that woman climbing the light post?
She kept climbing, and I immediately ordered her to get down.
Did she listen to your order?
No, ma'am. So I ran all the way to that pole. It was about 150 feet away at the time. And when I got there, I was at the base of the pole, and I told her again, I'm a police officer, and you must get down immediately.
Did she listen this time?
Yes, ma'am. She began to descend when she slipped and fell down on a young man standing underneath that pole, inside a police barricade.
I just want to make this very clear for the members of the jury. Where was Mr. Farnsworth when Lanny Davidson fell?
That's right. I later identified those two individuals as Mrs. Davidson and Mr. Farnsworth. While Miss Davidson was atop that pole, about 18 feet in the air, Mr. Farnsworth was inside the police barricade, directly underneath.
Could you see what Mr. Farnsworth was doing when he was inside that police barricade?
Yes, ma'am, I could.
What was he doing?
He was cheering and screaming, waving his fist, smiling up at Miss Davidson. He kept telling her to fly, Eagles, fly.
Mr. Jones.
Objection, Your Honor, to a lack of foundation in speculation. May I be heard?
Sure.
The counsel just said that Mr. Farnsworth said, fly, Eagles, fly. It actually is relevant whether or not that's directed to Miss Davidson. The witness said that it was. It's our understanding, it's our belief based on the evidentiary record that it wasn't. That he's just saying fly, Eagles, fly in regards to the football team, not urging Miss Davidson to keep climbing up the post. Counsel could be offering that to show that Sam Farnsworth was in some way acting negligently or recklessly in encouraging Miss Davidson to climb.
So your position is, just to make sure I understand, that the witness lacks, there's no foundation, the witness lacks personal knowledge to testify that those words were specifically directed to the person climbing the pole.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, what's your response to that?
Your Honor, the evidence we have on the record is that Mr. Farnsworth was standing inside the police barricade underneath Lanny Davidson, looking directly up at her and speaking those words at her while she was climbing. It's within his rationally based perception to say that those words were being said to her.
Response?
Your Honor, that foundation, what he saw, we have no objection to that. It's just making the connection about Mr. Farnsworth's intention. I believe the exact wording was telling Lanny Davidson to, and then fly, urging her to keep flying up the pole. That lacks foundation.
Yeah, I'm going to sustain the objection. I think everything that you just said, counsel, about that he was looking up, that he was chanting, looking in her direction, is all appropriate. But I think for him to draw that connection that it was directed to her, while it may be a fair inference that you can argue to the jury, is probably a bridge too far with respect to his testimony. So I'm going to sustain the objection, just strike that portion.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
And I'll constructively tell the jury to disregard it.
Mr. Jones, as Sam Farnsworth is standing inside that police barricade, looking up at his friend, is he saying anything?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Farnsworth repeatedly said, fly, Eagles, fly.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Your Honor, nothing further.
You're welcome.
Do you have any cross-examination for this gentleman?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right.
Good afternoon, officer.
Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
Well, I too got stuck in the elevator earlier, and it took quite a while to come down.
I'm sorry to hear that, sir.
It's all right.
We do have to talk a little bit more about the landing zone. Underneath the pole, you saw Miss Davidson climbing, if that's all right.
What landing zone?
The place at the bottom, sir. Because you saw that there was a fence, right?
Yes, sir. A barricade.
A metal fence around the pole, right?
Yes, sir. It
And you
was
saw that Mr. Farnsworth was
Your Honor, I'm
standing...
just going to ask the opposing counsel let my witness finish their answer before they interject with the next question.
I'm sorry, Your Honor, I didn't realize there was more to the answer.
Okay, let's proceed. Don't cut the witness off. I don't think we're quite there yet, but
Yes, Your Honor.
nobody cut the witnesses off. Proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. Sir, you saw there was a metal fence, right?
Yes, sir. There was at the base of the pole, about 3.5 feet high.
And you saw that Mr. Farnsworth was standing inside the metal fence, true?
Yes, sir. He was.
So let's back up. You said you were standing 150 feet away, right?
That's right. I was 150 feet away from the base of the pole.
You see Miss Davidson climbing the pole, right?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Farnsworth at the bottom.
Yes, sir.
You didn't go over and tell Mr. Farnsworth to get out of the way, did you?
No, sir. I immediately ran over to instruct Miss Davidson to get down immediately.
Didn't move Mr. Farnsworth out of the way, right?
No, sir. There was no time to do that.
Didn't move the metal fence, right?
No, sir.
You said there was no time to do that. You didn't look up at Miss Davidson and say, wait, stop, don't move, there's someone beneath you, did you?
I told her to climb back down immediately.
You didn't tell her to stay where she was while you moved Mr. Farnsworth out of the way, right?
No, sir.
Didn't bring a ladder, right?
I didn't have one on me, no.
You said, I'm with the police, right?
Yes, sir.
And you yelled, get down right now, right?
Yes, sir.
You yelled to her, get down right now, as Sam Farnsworth is standing right beneath her, right?
Mr. Farnsworth is standing at the base of the pole. That's correct.
Right beneath her.
Yes, sir.
You yelled at her, get down right now, as the metal fence is there, right beneath her. True?
Yes, sir. The metal fence was present.
She fell down.
Miss Davidson.
Yes.
Yes, sir. She appeared to slip.
She fell onto Sam, right?
Yes, sir.
Sam hit his head on the metal fence. True?
Yes, sir.
And Sam started to bleed, right?
Yes, sir. Profusely. I immediately started giving him first aid and called the paramedics immediately, and they arrived at 2255 minutes.
So I'm just looking for the fact that he hit his head on the metal pole, and he did, right?
No, sir.
The metal fence at the bottom
Yes, sir.
that was comprised of poles.
I'm not an expert in poles, sir, nor fences. I couldn't be certain.
But he hit his head on the metal fence. You can tell us that?
Yes, sir.
The metal fence you didn't move out of the way. True?
I didn't move the fence, sir.
Thank you, sir. Nothing
Of course.
Redirect.
No redirect, Your Honor.
Okay. Do you have any other evidence, or do you arrest?
No, Your Honor, the defense rests our case in chief. We're waiting for closing arguments.
Does anyone need a break, or can we go right to closings? Do any of you six need a break? Do either of you need a break?
Are we allowed breaks now?
Guess you'll have to find out if you ask. All right.
Can I run to the bathroom as well?
Sure.
Thank you.
It's 4:51. Let's come back at 5.
Yes, Your Honor.
Why don't we do a time check before we take a break?
Plaintiff, you have 7 minutes and 55 seconds. Defendant, you have 8 minutes and 55 seconds.
Am I good to go too? Thank you.
I know I said 5, but like, if everybody's here. Are you 6 ready? Are you 2 ready?
Yes, Your Honor.
Plaintiff, let's proceed with closing arguments when you're ready.
Yes, Your Honor. May it please the court. Counsel. The city chose to save money instead of a man's life. Members of the jury, when our government officials are warned clearly, urgently, repeatedly, that our city streets aren't safe after a sports game, we expect them to prioritize human life. Not protect the budget, not assume everything will be safe, not hope for the best. When they have measures they know can reduce the dangers, we expect them to take those measures. That's the duty this city ignored. Because when they were shown convincing evidence of 3 risks, the light posts, the ladders, and the landing zones, they chose to ignore those risks. That's why Sam Farnsworth's family has brought a suit of negligence against the city of Philadelphia. Because when a city ignores evidence, it's not just unreasonable, it's against the law. We had to prove 3 elements to you by a preponderance of the evidence, meaning more likely than not true. That the city acted unreasonably, that they didn't exercise the care an ordinary city should. Second, that Sam Farnsworth suffered harm. And third, that the city's unreasonable actions caused that harm. And we proved the city's actions were unreasonable and that they caused Sam's death by walking you through the 3 risks they knew about that resulted in Sam's death but chose not to solve. The first risk was the light posts. You saw this evidence today. In 2018 through 2023, the city greased the light posts, and they had reports of people climbing. 10, 12, 15, a small number. Yes, it was going up a little bit from 10 to 12, from 12 to 15, but only by a couple. And so they decided, well, what if we don't grease the light posts? What if we stop trying that strategy? So that's what they did earlier this year in January. And the number went up to 75. It didn't just increase by 5 reports, folks. It increased by 500%. Miss Edwards told you today that she thought that greasing the posts, that made it dangerous, despite not receiving a single report of anyone who got hurt falling from a light post while they were greased. Yet, in January of this year, when they decided not to grease the light posts, not only did the number of people climbing the posts increase by 500%, a young man lost his life. And in response to that evidence, the city did the exact same thing again and hoped for a different result. Some people call that the definition of insanity. All we needed to prove to you was that it was unreasonable. The result was as predictable as it was preventable, because the exact same situation played over again. Sam Farnsworth lost his life because the polls were not greased on Super Bowl Sunday this year. Ms. Davidson told you herself that climbing up the posts because they weren't greased was easy, and that she wouldn't have done it if they were greased. The city's decision to ignore convincing evidence led directly to Sam Farnsworth's death. If they just looked at the numbers that counsel herself showed you, we wouldn't be here. And Sam would. But even if you believe that decision to not look at the statistics, to not follow the trend, and not grease the light posts was reasonable, that only brings us to the second risk the city ignored, the ladders. Ms. Edwards told you they made a change following the reports of 75 people climbing, that they added metal fences to the base of the poles. Ms. Edwards told you herself, people climb these poles as a tradition. She must have known that the fact that you put a 2-foot metal fence next to it is not going to stop that. All it's going to do is make it more dangerous. Because when people, as they did, climbed up the fence and used it to get on top of the pole, if someone falls back down, they're going to hit the metal pole the city put at the bottom. That's exactly what happened. Not only did Miss Davidson use the fence as a ladder to make it easier to get up, when she fell back down, she hit Sam, who banged his head on the metal fence the city put there. If the city doesn't put the metal pole at the fence at the base of a pole that people climb as a tradition, we wouldn't be here. But they put the fence there, and that's why Sam lost his life. But even if you believe they acted reasonably in those two instances, even if it's reasonable to ignore the evidence about the light post and the greasing, even if it's reasonable to put a metal fence at the base of a pole people climb, they made a third unreasonable decision because one of their officials had a chance to fix it all. You heard today from Officer Jones that he saw the situation as it unfolded, saw Sam Farnsworth at the bottom, saw Lanny Davidson at the top. Think of all the reasonable decisions he can make to make that landing zone safe. All he has to do is go over and tell Sam, please leave. Step over the fence and get yourself out of harm's way. If he moves Sam out of the way, we wouldn't be here. If he moves the metal fence that he sees at the base of the pole, we wouldn't be here. If he brings a ladder so that Miss Davidson can get down safely, we wouldn't be here. If he has an ounce of common sense and yells up, please stay where you are, there's someone and something beneath you, we wouldn't be here. But the officer does none of those things. He panics, rushes to the base of the pole, and does exactly what he shouldn't. He yells, get down now, while Sam is standing right beneath Lanny and the metal fence is still right there. And I don't need to tell you what happened next, because you know that when Lanny tried to get down when the officer yelled, get down immediately, she slipped. Landed on Sam because the officer didn't move him, and Sam hit his head on the fence because the officer didn't move it. Members of the jury, the city knew about these risks. They knew these statistics. Ms. Edwards told you herself. The city knew that people climb these poles. Ms. Edwards told you they do it as a tradition. They knew that putting a fence at the bottom could cause someone to get hurt. They should have known that if they just told Lanny Davidson to stay put, bring her a ladder, clear the landing zone so that it's safe, then the harm wouldn't have happened. We're here in court because they knew those risks but chose to ignore them. And that's why we're asking to hold them responsible, find them liable. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Closing argument.
May it please the court. This case isn't about danger. It's about his defiance. It's 2018, and the city of Philadelphia's got a problem. We win too much. See, every time the Phillies, the Eagles, or the Flyers bring home another victory, we don't just celebrate it. The city ignites. People take to the streets, they chant, they cheer, and some people take it too far. Fires are lit, cars are climbed, and most dangerously, people start to scale lampposts. But the city doesn't just let it happen. No, they take this seriously. They put their heads together and they think, what could we do to keep people safe? And they come up with a solution in 2018. They're going to grease the poles. Try to make it so that the people can't climb them in the first place. But us Philadelphians were nothing if not determined. So what's supposed to be a deterrent, it actually becomes a challenge, a dare. Every time the city's doing well, they chant, grease the poles. The grease isn't doing what it's supposed to do. So by 2025, the city has to pivot. If the grease isn't working, they have to come up with something bigger, something more clear, something that tells fans don't climb. A fence. It's unmistakable, you can't miss it, and the message is clear. You're not supposed to be here, do not enter. 100,000 people filled the streets on the night of February 9th, 2025 to celebrate the Super Bowl. And finally, a resounding number of them listened to the warnings not to climb. 99,999 fans make it home safe that night, except one who defied orders. Because this case wasn't about the danger, it was about his defiance. Now, today, the plaintiff had the burden to prove their case. They had to show you it was more likely than not that three things were true. First, that the city of Philadelphia owed a man named Sam Farnsworth a duty of care. They had a responsibility to protect him. Two, they breached that duty. They failed to protect him. And three, that failure, that breach, it was a substantial factor in the death of Mr. Farnsworth. And the plaintiff, they weren't able to meet that burden today. Because we were able to show you two things: how the city acted, but how Sam Farnsworth responded. So I want to walk through that, starting with how the city acted. Because today you heard from the public safety director that was in charge of this safety plan. Three things they did to keep the people safe. There's a public awareness campaign telling everyone in the city a very clear message: don't climb the poles. If you were heading into those Super Bowl celebrations, there's no way you could miss it. If you climbed a pole, you knew you weren't supposed to be doing it. But if that warning wasn't enough, well, there was also another warning, a physical one. You saw this fence. There were fences like this around every single lamppost in the entire city. The message is clear. Don't enter here. Don't climb it. You're not supposed to be there. It's a warning. And now on top of that, members of the jury, well, they have someone to enforce those warnings. They've got significant police presence, 40 officers for 2-block radiuses. And they're out that night patrolling, making sure if people are climbing, well, that they're being told to get down. The city couldn't stop every single person from climbing. So they took those three measures to make sure that the vast majority of people didn't. And that those who did, well, that they were ordered to stop. Now, today, the plaintiff might have had the first burden, but we also took on a burden today. Because we pursued something called comparative negligence. That means that it was our job to show it was more likely than not that it wasn't the city that had a substantial hand in the death of Mr. Farnsworth, but that it was actually a combination of Mr. Farnsworth and his friend Lanny Davidson's actions on the night of the Super Bowl They killed him. Now, in meeting that burden, we had to show you whether or not Lanny Davidson and Sam Farnsworth took reasonable care while they were celebrating that big win. So I want to talk about how they reacted to the city's actions because it was anything but reasonable. You saw Lanny Davidson on the stand today. You saw opposing counsel asking her questions about this fence, except they used a different bit of terminology for the fence. They called it a ladder. Members of the jury, does someone who's acting reasonable look at this fence around every lamppost in the city and think, yeah, it's a ladder. I meant to climb that. No reasonable person does that. Now, we also gave you a reason why Lanny Davidson and Sam Farnsworth might not have been acting reasonable that night. Because like I said in my opening statement, it came down to two numbers, 26 and 0.1. See, Lanny Davidson and Sam Farnsworth, they had been drinking for 12 hours that night, from 10 a.m. until 10 p.m. before they decided to take to the streets and climb that pole. That's why they weren't acting with reasonable care. That's why they were ignoring all the warnings. Now, Sam Farnsworth, he had even more alcohol in his system than Lanny Davidson, the one who actually climbed the pole. He even had marijuana in his system. But it wasn't just Lanny Davidson that made an unreasonable decision when she climbed the pole. Because Sam Farnsworth, well, he also had to step over that fence, hoist himself over top of it, and enter that restricted area somewhere he knew he wasn't supposed to be. And he didn't just stand there. He wasn't acting as a spot like Miss Davidson told you he was. He was standing under her, egging her on, fly, Eagles, fly. Neither of them were acting with reasonable care. That's how they responded to the city's actions that tried to keep them safe. Now, I want to be clear. We weren't asking for perfection from the city at all. We understand that mistakes happen. They can't be perfect. But the city was doing everything in their power to make sure people were safe. And as much as the plaintiff wants to tell you that greasing the poles would have been a better option that night, that's not what the facts say. Because you saw this trend. In 2018, the city starts greasing poles. 10 people climb. And every year after that, there's more and more people climbing. And yes, when they stop greasing the poles, that number jumps to 75. But when they add the fence, the clear message, do not enter, 2 people climb, and one of them is Sam Farnsworth. That measure, the fence, was 99.99% effective. The only person that got injured was the one person who didn't listen, was someone who wasn't acting reasonably. Because this wasn't about how dangerous it was. It was about Sam Farnsworth and Lanny Davidson's defiance. For that reason, we ask that you find the city of Philadelphia not liable. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Rebuttal.
Yes, Your Honor. Quick time check.
39 seconds.
Thank you. Counsel wants you to believe this is a case about defiance, about people who broke rules and a city that just couldn't have known that they would do that. But what Ms. Edwards told you, the director of public safety, was that climbing lampposts is usual. It's a tradition. It's how they celebrate. The city knew that fans would do that. This case was about danger, about the dangers they knew about, that people would climb, that people could fall, that if there was a fence at the bottom, people might hit their head. It's exactly what happened because the city ignored the danger. Find them liable. Thank you.
Let's give them a round of applause. jurors to fill out their ballots. And then we will have some very brief feedback from our jurors, and then we will announce our winner. Brian. Thank you, Mayor. When we do feedback, I'm going to give you this mic, turn it on, and just pass it around, okay? Yeah. I have all the ballots. So we're going to have some feedback from our judges. I'm going to ask our judges to introduce yourself and tell the competitors what your favorite thing from the trial was.
Hey guys, I'm Brian. First I want to say this was an awesome round. You guys definitely both deserve to be here. It was so much fun watching you guys get up there and really argue this case the way that it was supposed to. Love the Eagles, go Birds, and you think you guys did it justice. My favorite thing about trial was, I think, how you guys characterized the amount of cops that were there. I really liked how you're saying it's 40 for every 2 blocks, and you're saying it's 1 for every 500 people that were there. It really showed you guys were arguing the details of the case. Really good job.
Hey everyone, I'm Clark. Really fantastic job. Obviously, for whoever wins this, you'll watch it back and you'll think, wow, that was the greatest thing I ever did in my life. For the person who loses it, you'll watch back and say, wow, there's 500 things I can watch back and be disappointed about. So whoever that is, you both did great. I know that means nothing right now and will mean nothing later, but you both really did a fantastic job. My favorite part from the trial, I would say probably had to be, as just a general, your use of the space, I think was really great. And for you, I think, I apologize, I can't remember you guys' first names. But for you, on the defense side, I think your just natural energy with the witnesses, it felt like you were willing to be kind of playful, which just made you very human. So I thought that was really, really excellent.
Hey guys, my name is Dennis. I'm gonna echo what was already said. This is hard stuff. I know how little time you guys have had to prepare. You all deserve to be here, and that goes for the witnesses too, which I really enjoyed. Favorite thing from this trial, one, I love the Philly references, and good on both sides for incorporating that. I think you have to in a place like this. That's easy points. And second of all, for the D attorney, I was very impressed with your range and responsiveness, and for P attorney, I was very impressed with your presence. Both of you guys should be really, really proud of yourself. You're gonna go far in the future.
Hi, I am William, and I agree. I'm not going to repeat. You guys both great. Did not remember first names either. So, but my favorite thing from the trial, it's actually two things, but it was
All
the
right, well, let me cut you off. It's Patrick and Rory. This was actually not that
Patrick
complicated.
and Rory.
Patrick
Okay.
and Rory.
Okay,
We
so-
we settled that.
Thank you very much. So it was mainly with the one moment for each of you with the photograph of the fence or the ladder, and it was your recross of the safety director. You showed it to her and you said, this is what he hit his head on. And I loved that. I thought that was a really great moment. It was a real put it in their face. Rory, you brought that same picture up to us and you said, does this look like a ladder to you guys? Is that reasonable? I thought those were the best moment of the round. It was good, responsive, really clever, very good. And you guys were both great. So congratulations.
Hi, everyone. My name's Grace. You guys were absolutely fantastic. Patrick, you just have this voice that fills up the room. You use the space really well. You're very physical, and very different styles for the both of you. Rory, I think you have this kind of swag about you that allows you to kind of get away with things that people ordinarily wouldn't. It's what Phil said. There was an objection to argumentative, but he was like, I kind of liked it. So on the plaintiff side, it was very crisp, very buttoned up, and on the defense side, it was like kind of shooting from the hip. So just very different styles, and I loved them both.
Hey y'all, my name is Marae. I'm gonna echo all of the comments. I think you guys were awesome. I know how tired you guys are and how much this is. So congratulations to you both, because you'll always look back on this and be really proud of what you did today and this weekend. Will actually stole my favorite thing from the trial, so thank you, Will, for that. But my second favorite thing would probably be you guys' speeches. I think you both did a really good job in the beginning of setting the tone and at the end of wrapping it up, but with some sass, which I always love. So congrats to you both and really good job.
There is a little bit of a trend that's forming at Trial by Combat. This is the 8th Trial by Combat, and now that the ballots are in, 6 of the 8 final rounds of Trial by Combat have come down to one check mark on one ballot. This was one of those 6. So by a 4-3 decision, by one check mark on one ballot, the winner of Trial by Combat 2025 is Rory Banfalvi. And I want to recognize Patrick McDonald from Hillsdale. Not only was Patrick in the final round, but to get to this tournament, he won our play-in tournament in April. So he really made it super far in this tournament. Congratulations, Patrick. What an amazing run. Congratulations. Congratulations. Thank you to our judges, thank you to our teams, thank you to our competitors, and we'll see you next year in Los Angeles.